Love for marriage, is that more important than money? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Nothing in life is free. If you marry someone for the money, you earn every penny. That's what my mom would tell me when I was a kid.
I'm sure she would.
So it would be money. That's
no.
The
point is that if you marry someone for the money, you earn every penny because you choose a life of unhappiness.
Yeah.
I think that was the lesson she always taught me. You have to be open-minded, you know? Not everything in life is material. And I think because there are so many ways to make money independently, and I mean, for example, writing your own book and like creating your own platform, I think there's less of a necessity for women to marry solely for money, when in the past and not that long ago, we couldn't even have our own credit cards, you know, without the permission of a man.
Yeah, but you also didn't incur any debt. That's why you couldn't have credit cards.
Yeah, but we were owned property by men.
No, you weren't owned property. That's ridiculous.
There's not a point in human history where women have been property of men.
Women who are like, yeah, sure, I'll marry a dude who makes $150,000 a year and pays for all my shit. That sounds a lot different than I'm looking to get married. To me,
who said that?
That sounds different.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I'm curious which one of us said that.
Well, so as we're going around the table, right, what do you think that when you say a man who can support himself and is supporting himself and can support a family, if he lives in the Santa Barbara area, what do you think that would take if you had to guess?
Probably over $300,000 a year, but we're not talking about this specific location. We're not including the fact that each of us are, I think everyone around the table is willing to have a 2-income household. Do you agree or do you disagree? I think partnership is everything. My dad and my stepmom, my dad is 16 years older than my stepmom. They've been together for 18 years now. He invested in her company and now she makes more money than him and she's the main provider of our household. I think
so
that
he gave her money for her company and now her
and she's paid it all back. Her company is doing much better, or it's doing well, I mean, and now she makes more money than him and pays his mortgage. And she's also helping me pay for my college. So women can
that's great.
be providers.
That's called dividends. That's called dividends. That's how that works when you invest in a company and it does well. You get money back out of it. That's
Absolutely,
how it works.
But she is a female.
He could have done that without any marriage, right?
Yeah, but I think if you find a partner who's willing to work with you and grow with you and create a sustainable life for you and a future family, I think that's an absolutely beautiful thing for both partners to have ambition. And also, I would be perfectly happy, you know, marrying a woman who makes more money than me or less money than me, or marrying a man who makes more money than me or less money than me, as long as in our combined household we can ensure the safety of one another and we both have similar mindsets with financial planning, investments, retirement funds, college funds if we are planning to have children, Roth IRAs, that type of issue.
What about the love thing? Is that the most important factor, or the money
for
thing?
marriage?
Absolutely.
Love for marriage, is that more important than money? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Nothing in life is free. If you marry someone for the money, you earn every penny. That's what my mom would tell me when I was a kid.
I'm sure she would.
So it would be money. That's
the point is that if you marry someone for the money, you earn every penny because you choose a life of unhappiness.
Yeah.
I think that was the lesson she always taught me. You have to be open-minded, you know? Not everything in life is material. And I think because there are so many ways to make money independently, and I mean, for example, writing your own book and like creating your own platform, I think there's less of a necessity for women to marry solely for money, when in the past and not that long ago, we couldn't even have our own credit cards, you know, without the permission of a man.
Yeah, but you also didn't incur any debt. That's why you couldn't have credit cards.
Yeah, but we were owned property by men.
No, you weren't owned property. That's ridiculous.
There's not a point in human history where women have been property of men.
That's not what I said. I said you weren't owned property in this country, ever.
Me personally, no, but...
No, women. Women were not.
In the United States, women were never considered legal property of another person.
But if you're don't have body autonomy and you can't make your own income, and you have to rely on being married in order to have any type of social standing.
Women could always make their own income in the United States. Where on earth did you get the idea that they couldn't?
Guys,
did you learn this in feminist studies class 101?
But like white women, like we're not really accepted into the working class.
if you want to argue, I'm not saying was no room for income and that there was no room for any type of sustainable life or women to, create some type of wealth. Until really wartime, women weren't allowed in the workforce, and that was only because there were no men.
Where did you get the idea
Where
that
in the
weren't?
workforce were they not
They
allowed?
were still nurses. They were still teachers.
Guys,
they were still doing all sorts
nurses
of jobs
and
inside
teachers,
of society. What do
so
you mean?
they were limited
Same types
to
of jobs they're doing
domestic
right now,
role
by the way.
laws.
They were doing.
They were
hang on.
they
They
were
were doing. Hang on. Just calm down. Relax. They were doing clerical work. They were teaching. They were nursing. They were doing all the same jobs that they're basically doing right now.
Okay, well, there are plenty of women who are moving up in corporate worlds as well as moving up in different sections
No, there's not very many women who are moving up the corporate ladder in corporate
Compared
world.
to
Why
50
there's so
years
many?
ago?
There's so few female CEOs for a reason. They don't gravitate towards that kind of work.
Okay. You're right. I'm wrong. Women are they are only meant to do domestic work.
No, I don't think that's what he's saying.
That's not what I said. That's a mischaracterization. I'm just explaining to you the reality. I don't understand why you're being so aggressive. I haven't been mean to you.
Can I
I'm just
ask
explaining
something?
to you.
Yeah, go for it.
What the reality of the situation is.
Go ahead, and then Isabel will go. Go ahead.
What does this have to do with women not being able to own, have their own credit cards or open a bank account in their own
Well,
name?
because women not being able to have bank accounts and credit cards because they weren't allowed to incur debt. This was great because right now the biggest holders of debt in the United States are women. It's crushing for most women. Before that, men had to incur all the debt. So the wife could go out and spend all of the money that she wanted in her husband's name, and he had to incur the debt even post-divorce. He still had to take care of the debt. She had none of it in her name. This was one of the primary arguments against feminism from the anti-suffragettes, is that they did not want to incur debt. And now women have racked up tons and tons of it.
I mean, so have men. It's crushing for men too. So I mean, I don't really think anyone should be forced to incur debt. So I'm not sure why.
Well, you know what? I think that if I asked a man if he got married, if all of the debt would be incurred by the woman and all he had to do was not have a credit card or bank account, I'd take that deal in 5 seconds.
What do you mean by not be forced to incur any debt?
It means that everything all money that I spend on all credit cards go immediately in your name.
Donated $200. In 1877, a woman was elected mayor in Kansas. Your history sucks. Accuracy matters. You are in fact wrong. Feminism has failed you. Patriarchy is the way to the truth, and stands ready to help be better.
Yo, Grid One, thank you. You had a question for her.
Yeah, I just wanted to get some clarification there. Nobody should be forced to incur debt. What does that mean?
Just in a purely hypothetical, perfect world, no one would be taking on debt to go to college.
Well, let's talk about the real world.
Okay. In the real world, I mean, that's not possible.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it should. I mean, basically, you're implying that it's good that it's men's responsibility to incur all debt. And I feel like if that were actually the case, then we would be in a different argument where it would be well, women suck because women don't incur any debt and we incur all of their debt. So I feel like it's just kind of a bad faith argument. I don't know.
Well, it's not a bad faith argument. It's just giving a descriptor for why it happened that way. Sure. Why it was that women, and there was far more anti-suffragettes than there were pro-suffragettes, by the way, made very compelling arguments, like they didn't want to get drafted, for instance. They didn't want... See, what the anti-suffragettes said was that women had the moral high ground because they weren't political tools. They weren't political tools because they couldn't vote. So they weren't tapped into as being political tools. So when they said something, they said it from a position of moral authority. They weren't being tapped into. So this is how they were able to argue successfully for things in women's interests without being just considered another voting bloc that needed to be appealed to. When it came to debt and things like this, it is true that women didn't hold they could have bank accounts, by the way, but most of the time when they opened up lines of credit and debt and accounts, it was always in their husband's name, but the husband was also responsible for all of the debt. The women weren't. And even when the man died, the woman would get his property, but it may not be the same if a woman died, that he would automatically default and get the property. She was able to incur all sorts of wealth for herself and didn't have to spend it.
Do you think that's a more preferable system? Would you like to go back to that financial?
Well, I think it's a more preferable system to begin to move women outside of the workplace. That way we can go back to a family dynamic that works and we can get the reproductive health of the United States back up, because right now it's in the gutter. I don't know if you know this or not, but it's in the gutter.
So
Our
then,
birth rate's way low.
then why would it be a problem for any of us to say we'd like a man who can support a family? Like, why is that a problem if you think that men should be incurring all the debt and taking on all the financial responsibility? If a woman says, well, I'd like a man who can support a family in Santa Barbara,
Well, because
why is that a problem?
this is a cyclical problem. The problem is if you say, I would love to have a single income support me, but then at the same time not recognize the problem that if you double the workforce, you're going to have the wages of men, that you're basically perpetuating the same issue that you're against.
Jump in.
I think it's
Last thing after you make
So
your point.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Say your thing, but I'm going to move on after that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just think for me, it's kind of the constant dichotomy of men constantly arguing, oh, well, women want men to pay for everything and want us to take care of them. But then it's also the idea of, oh, well, women can't do any jobs that aren't nursing or being a teacher or doing all these things naturally in the workforce, because women, whether or not you want to argue these aspects of history, on a mass scale, entered the workforce at a later date. The same thing with how women entered professional sports at a later date, or any other kind of gendered aspect of life, which is most of society. You're welcome to interject.
Well, really quick on the professional sports thing. So what exactly, when you bring up professional sports,
Sure.
do you mean because women got into professional sports at a later date, that's the reason why there's like a pay discrepancy in
No,
sporting
I think
events?
of course there's a pay discrepancy in sporting events based off of turnout and these other things,
Okay.
but I'm saying there's no foundation of growth. If you are able to acquire wealth and work jobs for hundreds of years, whether it is or decades, whether it's being a doctor, whether it's being a lawyer, and these institutions only existed under the guidance of men being able to do those things, such as Harvard only being a male-only school until the last 50 or 60 years.
Yeah, but
wait,
no,
I'm still
no,
talking.
No. Stop.
Thank you.
That's ridiculous.
Oh,
When
it
comes
is
to
not,
college
because my
especially,
grandmother
women
went to
have
the
always,
sister.
Hang on. Women have always outdone men academically, including in high school. They've always had better scores. Always. That has been the case. And there was no barrier for public education. Early feminists were flying all over the world. They were writing books, they were writing pamphlets, they were writing essays, and they were highly educated.
100%.
No men were pushing them out of those domains of academia.
I think I hear you, and I understand that that's your perspective, and I want to acknowledge that there are so many smart, scholarly women, but it is an absolute reality that women's work has been discredited. I can cite, I studied biological
theory
anthropology.
nonsense. What woman's work was discredited because she was a woman?
Look up when women were allowed to attend Harvard University for me, quickly.
Yeah, why? But who cares if that was exclusive? There was tons of other universities for them to attend to. And what is the problem with having a male-only college anyway if somebody wants to have one?
If prestigious universities catered exclusively to men and women entered these different aspects of the workforce later, it will take more time.
That's not what happened.
And
You're
gradual
full of shit.
project. It will take gradual progress for women to continue to be in those fields of study. Are there probably statistically in the U.S. more male chemists or lawyers? At UCSB, for example, the majority of professors on the panel of the chemistry department are white men. But does that mean in the next 20 years?
That's because women suck at applied science.
Why?
That's why they all get sociology
Tell me the science.
degrees.
Tell me
That's why
the
they're all in
science.
sociology
Tell me the
and they're in
science of
fake
why men
scientific
perform
fields.
higher in chemistry.
Look,
because
at some point you
guarantee.
gotta let me respond.
No, go
because-
ahead. Tell me the
because what you're doing
statistics.
is you talk so much, I can't actually
Okay,
go
tell me
point
the
by point with
statistics
you.
of how men perform
So
higher
I'll
in
try
chemistry.
to go point by point. Let's go with point one.
Sure.
Yes, it is true that when you're talking about scientific fields, especially chemistry, that's an applied science. Women don't go for applied science. They
That's
don't pursue it.
actually not entirely true.
They
Women
go-
make
they
up
go-
the
hang on,
majority
hang
of
on,
STEM
let me
degrees
finish.
today.
Let me finish. Okay, calm down. Soft sciences are preferable by women. They prefer soft science. Sure. I don't know why, right? Nobody knows why. Well, I mean, we have an inkling as to why, but they don't. They don't prefer it. The hard sciences are preferred by men. That's why you see mostly men inside of hard science fields. That is true.
Yeah, so
that's point one.
As of recently, the majority of STEM degrees actually are being pursued by women. I think a lot of that can be attributed to the modern cultural feminism movement at large.
No.
Period.
The devil's in the details. What kind of STEM degrees?
Largely the sciences. I have a degree,
What
2 degrees
kind
actually,
of
in
sciences?
biomedical sciences, one in
what
undergrad
kind?
and one in
Are they
graduate
going-
school.
What about engineering?
But correct, women statistically make up less of engineering programs until
Yeah, so
recently.
when it
Women
comes- when it
women
comes-
are
yeah.
becoming a much larger
Yeah, just saying
growing
it's a STEM
demographic in
field,
these things. But this is my
just-
my question
Okay,
is
hang on. Just saying it's a STEM field is not relevant. For instance, if you look at the replication crisis, you'll note that it's not just sociology which it affects, but the medical field as well. Medical fields are full of STEM degrees. However, it's not always replicatable science. It fails up to 60% of the time, for instance. That's still a
Red
soft
One
science.
Motorsports
Just saying
donated
that it's a STEM field
$200.
doesn't mean anything.
A.
Yeah.
The stupid in you must really hurt.
It wasn't
Men
Brown.
went to Harvard or Yale, which were
wasn't
male
Brown
only.
University at the
Women
time.
went to Brown and others. Brown was all female. Are you trying to be this stupid?
anyway, my question is, we can talk about men generally having more analytically structured brains, and that's why they've pursued applied sciences larger than the soft sciences, which women generally have pursued out of a more empathetic, emotional perspective historically, and they still do tend to pursue those career paths. I guess my question for you, Luce, is if women have been strategically held back for so long by society, if they've, in your own words, taken so much extra time to be admitted to schools like Harvard or to be given professional athletic opportunities, etc., we could keep going example by example, then what's the solution? Are you just saying women are always going to be considered, in your worldview, second-class citizens, or is there a change that needs to happen, in your perspective, societally to accomplish that?
I'm not saying that women are second-class citizens in the United States, and I'm not saying that in my personal experience I've felt second-class to anyone. I acknowledge certain privileges that I've had and the ability to pursue education, etc. But I do absolutely think when there is a woman expectation, for example, when my dad left my mom, she became a stay-at-home single mother, and she was living off of alimony and child support. But she needed to be taking care of 2 kids in the home at that time, and the court kind of put that onto her. My dad did not want custody, and I think very often women are forced into positions of nurturing and caring for, whether it's their partners, their children, etc. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or a wrong thing, and I'm not saying that, I personally do feel like I do have some level of a nurturing or more maternal aspect to me that maybe a man might not have. But I think it's very hard to succeed in your career for many women who don't have the socioeconomic standing or certain privileges to pursue those fields without, the consequence of having to take care of, whether it's younger siblings or their own children, or being forced into positions of choosing career versus family. I think, is anyone familiar with the poet Sylvia Plath?
Oh yeah,
Well,
I'm very
she
familiar. Sylvia Plath. Do you know how Sylvia Plath met her demise?
I do, and my point is, she writes a.
Tell them how
She
Sylvia
committed
Plath met her
suicide, and
demise.
she wasn't necessarily. Oh, excuse
Whatever,
me.
just continue.
Sorry. She wasn't necessarily the greatest person in the world, but she did write a poem.
No, she really wasn't, was she? She was pretty awful, wasn't she?
She was awful, but she did write a discussion about a poem called One Fig Tree. And she basically discusses how, as a woman, she felt like she had 3 paths in life: a famous poet, a mother with a good husband and good children, or a scholarly professor. And I think that's a choice that women are often expected to choose, is family, career, hobbies, whereas men often get the immediate option of choosing career. And that's not necessarily to say all men want that. But I do think women are asked to sacrifice
she
more
also drew pictures
socially.
of aborted fetuses, and she also wrote poems about
Cry Me
unaliving.
River.
She also wrote all kinds of insane poems. She was a lunatic.
But she's is she a lunatic any more than any crazy
Than any
artist?
of the feminists? No, she's not any more of a lunatic than any of them.
She was actually
That's
a
true.
self-proclaimed not feminist, so do not associate her with that
She
movement.
is a feminist, and her husband was a feminist and supported all of her work with his money because he was a feminist. He propagated
very
the
problematic,
feminist
actually.
agenda.
But my point is that I think a lot of women are asked to sacrifice more individually than men are on a career scale or on a family scale.
Bullshit.
Nuclear family, for example.
What?
So
How are they
what
asked
about
to
the nuclear
sacrifice
family
more?
is asking women to sacrifice things that the men isn't?
How many men do you know that were ever stay-at-home dads?
My dad, for one, for several years of my childhood.
Statistically, huh?
No.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm just saying there is an expectation on women, from whether it's a natural perspective or an evolved perspective. Women bear children for a duration of 9 to 10 months. They have to take care of them biologically post-birth, whether it's through breastfeeding or other acquisitions. And I think because of those biological factors, we have been forced more into the nurturing role in a social sphere as well.
Wait.
That's a
You've been
powerful
forced
word. Forced is a really powerful word.
Hold on. Can you just repeat? You said that how many men do you know who
Who were stay-at-home dads versus
Grid
stay-at-home
1
moms.
Motorsports
I'll get to that
donated
in just a sec.
$200. If you think it is easy to be a man, read Self-Made Man by Nora Vincent.
Yeah.
Your little mind will
it's easy to be
explode.
a man.
Your simplistic arguments insult literally everyone watching this program. Let the adults talk.
For those who don't know, Nora Vincent, a woman who did this like kind of experiment where she basically lived as a man. I don't think she was transgender, but she dressed like a man, looked like a man, lived like a man. And she was like, because she's a feminist, oh, this is going to be so easy, blah, 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 all this privilege. And then actually it was just totally brutal, like the social
100%.
aspects of it. But you were saying something about, well, how many men do you know who would
I
be
think
stay-at-home?
Agreed, but to your point, I think it is very hard to be a man the same way it's very hard to be a woman, the same way it's very hard to be a human being. No part of my argument was saying that it's not
What's
difficult.
the thing with the stay-at-home parent, though?
I just think statistically, until very recently, it was significantly less likely that men would be stay-at-home parents, as well as the failure of our career system not allowing men to take paternal leave.
Well, do you think that there's just, I would argue that there's, like, who would you say is to blame for that? That, like, men just, don't want to
I'm not
be-
blaming anyone. I'm saying it is a natural part of our society that women have been not forced, excuse me.
Yeah.
You're right with that language.
Didn't you earlier say that you want a guy to pay for the first date?
If he asks me out, if I ask him out, I'm happy to pay.
Do you ask guys out?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
In the
Generally
past, for sure.
speaking, do you think who's initiating first dates?
Obviously, men,
I would
probably
argue
statistically.
99% of first dates, men are the ones initiating.
I don't know. Men are kind of scared these days, so
Well,
I would
we have-
say
That is interesting.
I would say it's
Yeah.
fairly even. But all I was saying that because of the actual biological factor of being a childbearing woman, not that all women are, I think there is a standard in our society that women are these nurturing roles, and that reflects in the careers that you proclaim that women
But
succeed
hold on,
the
I'm
most
going back
in.
to this. You stated something
Yeah, but
about.
I mean, why-
Hold on.
why is that?
You
Okay.
stated something about. Well, men, they wouldn't be these stay-at-home fathers. Well, that's a mating.
didn't say
hold
that.
on. You said something about.
I didn't.
Then restate it for me.
I'm saying
Something about the stay-at-home
when you
fathers.
consider the fact that even if you look in the court of law, even when the mother is the unfit parent, the court of law in a divorce case will always favor the woman getting custody.
Sounds like a female privilege, doesn't it?
I mean, if having to deal with kids, 3 screaming children on your own is a privilege to you, maybe. But I think that aspect
Why are
of
they in
female
court?
privilege was created by
If there's
the
a
patriarchy.
custody dispute,
Sure.
somebody's desirous of having custody.
Sure.
So let's assume that it's the man who's desiring custody and the woman doesn't want it. That wouldn't be a male privilege that he doesn't get custody.
Why do you think I'm saying male privilege or female privilege? I'm saying objectively in the court of law they favor
Yeah.
women, and that's a negative a lot of the time for men who want to participate in parenting. I think women are looked at as mothers in society, and that's not necessarily always true and not necessarily
and men are
always
looked
fair.
at as wallets
Okay.
and providers and
Oh,
disposable.
that's terrible. I'm sorry
and
that that's been your
disposable.
experience. I'm not saying one is worse than the other
Cool.
or one's
But
untrue.
you said something. I'm trying to get back to the original point. You said something about single stay-at-home fathers.
Yeah.
What was your argument?
I was just stating that there are less stay-at-home fathers, as well as
And
the
that's-
failure of our career system that does not allow a lot of men to take.
That's because of a mating pressure that women put on men, not because there's a. That's entirely a mating pressure that women impose on men. We went around this table. All of you said the guy has to make this much money. He has to pay for the first date, blah, blah, blah. That's a mating pressure you impose.
I mean, I've
It has
dated
nothing to do
people
with
from
patriarchy.
multiple different